Welcome to the last and final book from the Party Fairy series, Jasmine the Present Fairy. Jasmine the Present Fairy can't conjure up perfect prizes for the street party without a magic party bag of presents. Can Rachel and Kirsty help her to find it before it's all wrapped up? Rainbow Magic, the Party Fairies. Jasmine, the Present Fairy. And then we've got the map. And then we've got a very special party invitation, contents. And now we're going to start the book. A special street party. Look at all these stalls, Rachel, Kirsty Tate said, pointing down the street where she lived. This is going to be a great party. All of Kirsty's neighbours were bustling around, setting up stalls outside their houses. There were all sorts of things going on, from games and raffles to the stalls selling bric-a-brac and cakes. Delicious smells of waft towards the girls from the barbecue at the other end of the street. The road was closed to traffic, and people were already milling around in the sunshine, enjoying the fete. Oh, that looks fun. I think having a street party is a great idea, Rachel Walker, Kirsty's best friend, said with a grin. I wish we had one of these in our street back home. Rachel had come to stay with Kirsty for a week of the Easter holidays. Kirsty was opening the last box of books. We'd better hurry and put these on the stall, she said. Lots of people are arriving now. I'm glad the party is today before I go home tomorrow, Rachel said, helping Kirsty arrange the books on the stall that Mr. and Mrs. Tate were running. I hope we raise loads of money for charity. We always do, said Kirsty happily, stacking the books neatly. Lots of people come to the party from all over town, but, she lowered her voice, we have to be extra careful this year, won't we? Rachel nodded solemnly. Yes, she agreed. A party means we must keep our eyes open for goblin mischief. Rachel and Kirsty shared a wonderful secret. They had become friends with the fairies, and now, whenever their fairy friends were in trouble, Rachel and Kirsty were happy to help. The cause of the trouble was usually cold, spiky Jack Frost, who had been banished to his ice castle by the King and Queen of Fairyland. This time, Jack Frost was determined to ruin the secret party which the fairy godmother and the 7 party fairies were planning for the Fairy King and Queen's 1000th Jubilee. Jack Frost had sent his mean goblin servants into the human world to spoil as many parties as they could. When the party fairies flew to the rescue, the goblins tried to steal their magic party bags so that Jack Frost could use their special magic to throw a fabulous party of his own. But Rachel and Kirsty had managed to stop the goblins so far and helped 6 of the party fairies to keep their party bags safe. I'm not going to let Jack Frost's goblins spoil the street party, Kirsty said in a determined voice, or the King and Queen's Jubilee. Rachel nodded in agreement as Kirsty's parents hurried towards them. You have done well, Mrs. Tate said, smiling, admiring the neat piles of books. I think you 2 girls have worked hard enough, Mr. Tate added as the customers began to gather around the stall. You go and explore the fete. Great, Kirsty whispered to Rachel as they walked away. Now we've got a chance to look for goblins. The girls wandered happily through the crowds. There were lots of games such as darts, hook-a-duck and tombola, and there were tables piled with bric-a-brac, toys, homemade jams, and other things for sale. Rachel stopped at a cake stall, her mouth watering as she looked at the delicious display of tarts, sponges, and pies. Cherry the Cake Fairy would be proud of those, she laughed. There's no sign of any goblin mischief, said Kirsty. Shall we have a go on the tombola? The tombola was managed by one of Kirsty's neighbours, Mr. Cooper, and there was already a queue. Kirsty and Rachel stood behind, a little girl holding her mum's hand. The girl was staring up at the prizes on the shelves behind the tombola machine. I hope I win a cuddly toy, Mummy, she said excitedly. Any ticket ending in 4 wins a prize, called Mrs. Cooper, spinning the tombola. Rachel and Kirsty watched as the little girl pulled out a purple ticket. She unfolded it carefully. Mummy, I won! She gasped. It's number 214. Well done, her mum laughed. Let's hope it's a soft toy, Rachel whispered to Kirsty as the little girl handed Mr. Cooper the ticket. But sharp-eyed Kirsty had already spotted the prize with the purple ticket 214 pinned to it. It's not, she said, pointing. Look! The prize was a blue plastic apron with a picture of a fluffy white kitten on the front. Kirsty hoped the little girl wouldn't be too disappointed. Right, let me find your prize, said Mr. Cooper, scanning the shelves. It's here somewhere. But just before he spotted the apron, something magical happened. Rachel and Kirsty saw a shower of blue sparkles appear from thin air and whirled around the apron. The next moment, the apron had vanished, and in its place sat a fluffy white toy kitten with a blue satin bow around its neck. Pinned to the bow was a purple ticket, 214. Aw, Katie the kitten fairy would love her. I've won the white kitten, the little girl cried joyfully. Looking puzzled, Mr. Cooper lifted the toy. I don't remember seeing that prize before, he murmured. Kirsty and Rachel grinned at each other as Mr. Cooper handed the kitten to the delighted girl. Oh, that's so cute. That was fairy magic, whispered Kirsty. Rachel nodded. And that means there must be a party fairy nearby. Unlucky dip. The little girl skipped off happily, clutching her prize, while Kirsty and Rachel slipped behind the tombola stall to look for the fairy. They couldn't see any sign of her. Rachel, Kirsty, the girl suddenly heard the silvery voice calling from above their heads. I'm up here. The girls looked up at a string of coloured flags tied to the top of the stall, and there was Jasmine, the present fairy, balancing on the string like an acrobat on a tightrope. Hello, Kirsty and Rachel called, smiling up at her. Aww. Rachel and Kirsty and Jasmine. Can't see her eyes, her nose, or her mouth. That's funny. Jasmine fluttered down to join them, her straight brown hair flying out behind her. She wore a long blue skirt with a fluted hemline that swirled around her ankles and a cropped top in the same shade of blue. On her feet were dark blue ballet shoes with satin ribbons, and her headband she carried in her hand she carried a glittering blue wand. I'm here to make sure that your street party goes well, she explained, and that all the prizes are as perfect as possible. She smiled at Rachel and Kirsty. And that means making sure no naughty goblins are trying to ruin the party, she added in a determined voice. Have you seen any goblins? Rachel asked anxiously. No, Jasmine began, but she was interrupted by the sound of someone crying loudly. It came from the lucky dip next to the tombola. Someone sounds upset, Kirsty whispered. Maybe we'd better take a look. Jasmine flew down and hid on Rachel's shoulder behind her hair. They hurried over to join the queue at the lucky dip. A little boy was standing by the bran tub, crying bitterly, with a toy plane in his hand. I loved the plane when I wrapped it, the boy wailed. But look, Dad, the horns are broken. This could be goblin trouble, Jasmine whispered in Rachel's ear. Very sorry, said the man at the lucky dip stall. I tell you what, Why don't you pull out another parcel for free? The boy stopped crying immediately. Thank you, he beamed. Rachel, Kirsty and Jasmine watched as the little boy put his hand into the bran tub and pulled out a small parcel. He unwrapped it eagerly, but they all stared in horror when a mouldy old apple fell out. Oh no, Jasmine gasped. The little boy began to cry again. Meanwhile, the stall holder was looking very flustered. I think somebody's playing a silly joke on me, he said crossly. Don't cry. He patted the little boy on the shoulder. Have another go. Rachel, Kirsty and Jasmine watched anxiously as the boy pulled out his third parcel. This time, he unwrapped a toy car without any wheels. All the presents in the lucky dip are spoiled, Kirsty whispered to Rachel and Jasmine. What are we going to do? The little boy was about to burst into tears again, but the kind stall holder saved the day. Look, he said, leaning across to the hook-a-duck stall next door, which he was also running. I'll give you one of those prizes instead. And he handed the boy a shiny bat and ball set. Great, the little boy said happily, showing it to his dad as they walked away. This is definitely goblin mischief, Jasmine said, as the man bent over the bran tub and began looking through it. But I'll soon set things right with my party magic. That's exactly what the goblins will be hoping for, Kirsty hissed, looking worried. Don't get your party bag out. He'll be waiting for a chance to steal it. I can't help that, Jasmine whispered, glancing at the boys and the girls behind them. The children will be so disappointed if I don't fix the lucky dip. Well, we'll help, Rachel said. Kirsty, let's make sure the stall owner doesn't notice Jasmine at work. And keep your eyes peeled for goblins. A man was looking very glum. I don't think you should have a go, girls, he said. I may have to close the lucky dip. No, don't do that, Rachel said quickly. I'd like to go on your hook-a-duck stall. What do I have to do? While the man was talking to Rachel, Jasmine slid quietly off her shoulder and flew down to the edge of the bran tub. Meanwhile, Kirsty stood right in front of the tub so that nobody in the queue could see what was happening. She was looking out for goblins too. Quickly, Jasmine opened the party bag and took out a handful of sparkling blue fairy dust, shaped like tiny bows. She sprinkled it over the bran tub and gave a sigh of relief. Hold on, she whispered to Kirsty. But just then, there was a scrambling noise from inside the bran tub. Suddenly, a big green goblin popped up and snatched Jasmine's party bag. Oh no. Girls on the run. Oh no. Jasmine and Kirsty gasped together as the goblin lurched towards them. Luckily, Jasmine was too quick for him, and she whisked the party bag out of his reach. Muttering crossly, the goblin leaped out of the bran tub and darted out of sight behind the stall. Mean goblin. Still shaking with fright, Jasmine fluttered up to sit on Kirsty's shoulder, but as she landed her party bag slipped from her trembling fingers. It fell straight into the lucky dip and disappeared amidst the sawdust. Oh no, Kirsty groaned. Over the shoulder of the stall holder, Rachel had seen what happened. Somehow, I had to get Jasmine's party bag back, and fast. Actually, I don't want to go on the hook-a-duck, she said quickly. I think I'll have a go on the lucky dip after all. That man looked amazed. Are you sure? He asked. It doesn't seem very lucky at the moment. Quite sure, Rachel said firmly. Me too, Kirsty added, guessing what Rachel was up to. The two girls handed over their money. Kirsty went first, and Rachel and Jasmine and the stall holder watched as she felt around inside the tub. Her fingers closed over something as she pulled it out, but it wasn't one of the wrapped presents, not Jasmine's party bag. Inside the parcel was a beautiful blue mini kite. least the presents are okay now, Jasmine whispered in Kirsty's ear. Your turn, said the stall holder, looking at Rachel. But just then, one of the children at the hooker duck stall gave a cry of alarm. He had accidentally got his fishing rod caught in a string of flags. The stall holder went to help, and Rachel leaned over the bran tub. But just as Rachel was making her lucky dip, Kirsty gave a gasp of horror. Watch out, she whispered. The goblin is climbing up the table leg. There he is. Sure enough, the goblin was clambering up the leg of the table, back towards the bran tub, with a very determined look on his face. There's only your dip left, Rachel, Kirsty whispered anxiously. You must get Jasmine's party bag before the goblin does. Quickly, Rachel plunged her hand into the sawdust and began to feel around. She wondered how she would know when she'd found the party bag, but then she felt something tingle under her fingers. Fairy magic, Rachel said to herself, and she drew the object out. Both girls gasped with relief. It was Jasmine's party bag. Hurrah! Jasmine cried happily. Aww, and it's so, so tiny. Thanks, Rachel. Just then, the goblin peered over the edge of the bran tub. He grinned when he saw the party bag and made another grab for it. But Rachel managed to jump away from him, clutching the bag tightly. Let's get out of here, Kirsty suggested. Quick, back to my house. The girls and Jasmine darted behind the stall and ran away from the fete towards the Tate's house, but the goblin chased after them. Oh no. Rachel glanced over her shoulder. He's not far behind, she panted. They reached the house, and Kirsty let them in through the front door. But the goblin was charging towards them, and the girls only just managed to slam the door in time. We have to get rid of the goblin, Jasmine said urgently. I've got an idea, Kirsty declared suddenly. Rachel, you guard the door. Jasmine, follow me. Rachel nodded, and waiting by the front door, Jasmine and Kirsty dashed into the living room. Then, a tiny sound made Rachel jump. Her heart thumping, Rachel looked round. She smiled to see Pearl, Kirsty's black and white kitten, sitting at the top of the stairs watching her. But then, Rachel heard something else. It was the noise of the cat flap in the kitchen door creaking open. Rachel frowned. If Pearl was sitting on the stairs, then who was coming in? She crept along the hall towards the kitchen and spotted the goblin climbing in through the cat flap. Naughty goblin. Kirsty! Jasmine! She shouted. Look out! The goblin is coming! All wrapped up. In the living room, Jasmine looked at Kirsty in alarm. What shall we do? She cried. But Kirsty was picking up an empty cardboard box which had been full of books for the stall. If we can make the goblin believe your party bag is in it, this box, we might be able to trap him inside, she said. Can you lay a trail of magic sparkles leading into the box? I can do better than that, Jasmine replied eagerly. She opened her party bag and sprinkled some glittering fairy dust onto the cardboard. Immediately, it changed into a beautiful blue gift box with a lovely golden ribbon laying beside it. Then, Jasmine laid the trail of fairy dust into the box, and she and Kirsty dived out of sight behind the sofa. No sooner were Kirsty and Jasmine hiding than the goblin dashed into the living room and skidded to a halt, closely followed by Rachel. Poor Rachel couldn't believe her eyes when she saw the trail of fairy dust and no sign of Kirsty and Jasmine. Oh no, she gasped. If the party bag is in the box, the goblin can take it. The goblin had also spotted the fairy dust trail and he was beaming all over his face. Ha! He chuckled gleefully, sticking his tongue out. Rachel and Jack Frost is going to be very pleased with me. and still chuckling, he crawled into the box. Immediately, Jasmine and Kirsty rushed out from behind the sofa. Rachel, who wasn't expecting it, almost jumped out of her skin. "Quick, Rachel!" cried Kirsty. "Help me close the box." Rachel sprang forward, and she and Kirsty shut the lid. Then Jasmine waved her wand, and the gold ribbon floated up into the air and tied itself firmly around the box. There was a cry of Rachel from inside as the goblin realized he'd been tricked. "So that's what you were up to," Rachel laughed. "Let me out!" the goblin roared. "I don't think so," Kirsty replied. "Shall we send the goblin back to Jack Frost by fairy magic mail?" Jasmine suggested. The girls nodded, and Jasmine waved her wand again. There was a shower of fairy dust, and a label appeared on the box. It said, "Jack Frost Ice Castle," in big letters. Then, in another swirl of glittering magic, the parcel vanished completely. Fairyland fun. Kirsty turned to Rachel. "We did it!" she beamed. "We saved all the party fairies' magic party bags. That means the Jubilee party for our king and queen can go ahead without any more trouble from Jack Frost," Jasmine declared happily. "And it's all thanks to you two." Kirsty and Rachel grinned proudly at each other. Then the girl stared. "Look!" she cried, pointing at the window. A rainbow of shimmering colours was streaming through the glass. The girls blinked in wonder as one end of the beautiful rainbow came to rest on the floor beside them. "It's the fairy magic rainbow to take us to fairy. It's the magic rainbow to take us to fairyland," Rachel breathed. "Remember, Kirsty? Bertram said the fairy godmother would send us a rainbow for us when it was time for the Jubilee party." "Oh," Kirsty gasped. "But we're not ready. We haven't got our party clothes on." Jasmine laughed. "You step onto the end of the rainbow, girls," she told them. "We party fairies will soon sort you out when you get to fairyland." She waved her wand. "See you very soon," she called as she vanished in a swirl of glitter. "Whoa, I coloured in the rainbow." "Come on, Kirsty," Rachel said, taking her friend's hand. Together, the girls stepped carefully into the rainbow. Immediately, there was a whooshing sound, and they were surrounded by glittering golden fairy dust as the rainbow whisked them away. Aww. "Here they are," called a joyful voice as the golden sparkles cleared. The girls found themselves in the great hall of the party workshop in fairyland. They were already fairy-sized themselves, with glittering wings on their backs, and there was Jasmine and the other 6 party fairies smiling at them. Cherry the cake fairy, Melody the music fairy, Grace the glitter fairy, Honey the sweets fairy, Polly the party fun fairy, Phoebe the fashion fairy, and Jasmine the present fairy, who is the book I have been reading so far today. "Welcome to the party," they cried. "Wow," Rachel exclaimed, looking around. Last time the girls had been there, the party fairies had been busy with preparations, but now everything was ready. All the fairies were there to welcome the king and queen, dressed in their best party outfits. Grace the glitter fairy had been busy decorating the hall with sparkling streamers, rainbow balloons, and jeweled lanterns. There were also tiny white fairy lights strung all over the ceiling. Rachel and Kirsty had never seen anything so beautiful. In one corner, the frog orchestra was playing a cheerful tune. In another, presents were piled up all beautifully, wrapped by Jasmine and tied with satin bows in the rainbow colours. There were bowls of sweets placed here and there, and on a golden table stood a huge cake shaped like the king and queen's palace. Oh, that looks awesome. Rachel and Kirsty were amused to see the goblin who had tried to steal carry the cake fairy's party bag, fussing over the cake. Now don't touch the icing, he was telling the fairies, standing on the table. I spent ages making sure it looked exactly like the palace. He seemed to be enjoying himself, Rachel whispered to Kirsty. I'm so happy to see you, girls, the fairy godmother declared as she hurried towards them. Her green eyes shone with happiness, and the jewels on her golden dress twinkled in the candlelight. We're so grateful to you for making sure our party wasn't ruined by Jack Frost. She turned to Phoebe the fashion fairy. I think Phoebe has something for you. I do, Phoebe laughed. How about some beautiful new dresses for the party girls? Oh, yes, please, Kirsty and Rachel cried together. Wow, they look awesome. Phoebe smiled and threw a handful of sparkling fairy dust over them. Both girls closed their eyes. Kirsty was first to open them again. Oh, Rachel, she gasped. These are the most beautiful dresses I've ever seen. Rachel opened her eyes to see Kirsty wearing a long, sparkling rose pink and gold dress with pink ballet shoes and a glittering pink tiara. Rachel wore the same, but her outfit was in shimmering lilac and silver. Thank you, Phoebe, the girls began, but before they could say any more, a little fairy zoomed in to the great hall, panting with excitement. The king and queen are here, she cried. And this is the last chapter. Party time! You know what? That actually looks a bit like Grace the Glitter Fairy, to be honest. The long hair. Everyone began to talk at once, but the fairy godmother raised her wand for silence. Now remember, she called, when the king and queen get out of their carriage, everybody shout, Surprise! Rachel and Kirsty and all the fairies crowded around the door. A shiny crystal carriage pulled by 6 white unicorns and driven by Bertram, the frog footman, was making its way towards them. The carriage stopped and Bertram hopped down to open the door. Out stepped the fairy king and queen. Surprise! Shouted everybody. Rachel and Kirsty loudest of all. The king and queen looked puzzled for a moment, but then they saw a golden banner which hung over the castle door. Congratulations to our beloved King and Queen Oberon Titania on their 1000th jubilee. Oh, the Queen gasped, looking delighted. How wonderful! I think our party fairies have a hand in this, the King beamed joyfully. Aww. And the unicorns. I bet Leona, the unicorn fairy, has something to do with those unicorns, but she's not in this series or book. Fairy godmother stepped forward. Welcome, King Oberon and Queen Titania, she announced. But the party fairies aren't the only ones who have helped to make this party special. We must thank our friends Rachel and Kirsty, as she turned to smile at the girls. Once again, they have saved us from Jack Frost's mischief. Thank you, girls, said the king warmly. You must tell us the whole story later. You both look beautiful, the queen added with a smile. Now let's forget all about Jack Frost and enjoy the party. Rachel and Kirsty had never been to such a party in their lives. The four orchestra played catchy tunes specially created by Melody the Music Fairy, and all the fairies danced and fluttered around like colourful butterflies. Then there were party games organised by Polly the Party Fun Fairy, Pass the Magic Parcel, musical magical chairs, and many more. The sweets made by Honey the Sweets Fairy were so delicious that Rachel and Kirsty just couldn't stop eating the strawberry sparkles. After the games, everyone gathered around to watch the king and queen open their presents and then cut the wonderful cake made by Cherry and iced by the goblin. All too soon, the party was over. I hope you had a good time, girls, Queen Titania said, smiling at Rachel and Kirsty. It was great, Rachel declared. The best party ever, Kirsty added. It's time for you to go home now, the Queen went on. She waved her wand, and the shimmering rainbow appeared beside them. But before you go, I think the party fairies have something for you. Jasmine and Cherry flew forward. These are from all of us, Jasmine said, handing Kirsty a pink sparkly bag, while Cherry gave Rachel a lilac one. Don't look in them till you get home. Thank you, Kirsty and Rachel replied, waving at their friends. See you again soon, we hope. Goodbye, answered all the fairies, and with the voices of the fairy friends ringing in their ears, the girls stepped into the rainbow. Moments later, they found themselves in the Tate's kitchen, restored to their usual size and wearing their normal clothes once more. Aww, that's nice. Oh, that was magical, Kirsty sighed happily. Rachel was already opening her party bag. Look, Kirsty, she exclaimed in delight. The bags are full of presents from their party friends. There is a piece of Jubilee cake from Cherry, a fairy music CD from Melody, a tub of glittery lip gloss from Grace, a silk bag of sweets from Honey, a pack of magic playing cards from Polly, and a sparkly bracelet from Phoebe. And Jasmine had given them each a golden jewellery box with a revolving fairy on top to put all their presents in. I bet Josie the jewellery fairy would have liked the jewellery box. And yeah, that's really good. And I bet Frankie the makeup fairy would have liked the lip gloss. There they are. No, that actually looks like Paige the pantomime fairy, but I doubt that's her. Rachel and Kirsty couldn't believe their eyes. We must be the luckiest girls in the world, Rachel sighed. And we can still enjoy the rest of the street party too, Kirsty added. Later that night, the girls lay in their beds beside Kirsty's room, still too excited to sleep. The jewellery boxes filled with presents sat on the dressing table. It's sad that I have to go home tomorrow, Rachel said with a yawn. But I really enjoyed our latest fairy adventures. And we'll see each other again soon. Me too, Kirsty agreed, starting to feel sleepy at last. She closed her eyes. There was silence for a few moments. Then I can hear something, Rachel said. It's coming from our jewellery boxes. The soft tinkling sound of party music filled the room. Fairy magic, Kirsty said happily, snuggling down under her duvet. Good night, Rachel. Coming soon, the Jewel Fairies. Well, guys, I've officially finished the Party Fairy series. We have got Cherry the Cake Fairy, Melody the Music Fairy, Grace the Glitter Fairy, Honey the Sweets Fairy, Polly the Party Fun Fairy, Phoebe the Fashion Fairy, and Jasmine the Present Fairy. The next series I am meant to be reading is The Jewel Fairies. Thank you for watching. Bye.